Hello, YouTubers. Today, we are going to talk about the 1970s con artist who became Hollywood's top star. It's pretty safe to say that Frank Abagnale Jr. lived an extraordinary life, widely known as one of the most notorious con artists in the entire world. Frank Abagnale Jr. spent the majority of his life impersonating identities, forging documents, and even impersonated as an airline pilot to earn a major profit for himself. Crazy, right? He gained notoriety in the US and overseas for his fraudulent crimes. After years on the run from the FBI and other worldwide authorities, he was finally caught and was made an offer to help the FBI as an expert on forgery and theft. He later became the inspiration for a certain Steven Spielberg movie. Let's take a deeper look on the story of Frank Abagnale Jr. Frank Abagnale Jr. was born on April 27, 1948 in Bronxville, New York. The third of four children to parents Frank Abagnale Sr. and Paulette Abagnale. The couple met in Algiers during World War II, while Frank Sr. was stationed in Oran, with Paulette still only in her teens when they wed. After the war, the two moved to New York, where Frank Sr. started his own business. Abagnale's childhood was described as stable and had a deep relationship with his father. His father traveled often and was heavily involved in Republican politics, leaving an early impression on Frank Jr. However, the unexpected happened when Paulette decided to leave Frank Sr. due to his frequent absences and the kids, which turned Abagnale's life upside down. His father was deeply affected, still in love with his wife, and it took a toll on the kids. After settling their divorce, Abagnale decided to live with his father and was often involved in Frank Sr.'s business operations, which led to Abagnale's learning about white-collar transactions, a life of crime and credit card schemes. As a teenager, Abagnale soon entered a life of crime with shoplifting. The petty crimes did not last long, as Abagnale decided to take things to a whole other level. Ironically enough, his first victim was his father. He began using his father's credit card to make a profit for himself. He called various gas stations and told the owners to inquire him for merchandise well below the actual product value. He convinced the attendants of the gas station to give him a portion of his sale back in cash while keeping a cut for themselves. This scam lasted for a month until his father later received a bill for $3,400, and the scam fell apart. Abagnale was not aware that his father had been struggling financially. His mother, disgusted by the news, sent Abagnale to a school for troubled boys, and it was during that time that his father lost his business. Unhappy with the current predicament, he decided to leave home at the age of 16. He got a job for very low pay, $1.50 an hour. Yikes. And believed his pay was low due to the fact that he received no formal education. So Abagnale decided to do something about it. Forgery. Abagnale forged his driver's license that altered his age to 10 years older. While it did get him some better paying jobs, he still failed to make ends meet. He then opted to quit his job and started writing bad checks with his forging skills to support himself financially. He was a master forger and considered one of the first people to exploit the numbers of the code, line-leading checks to reroute. He eventually wrote over 100 bad checks, but overdrawing his account only happened for so long, as the bank eventually demanded payment. Due to this, he started using innovative methods to get away with these schemes. One of these methods included taking a batch of deposit slips, pre-filled his account number, and put them back in the stack. He noticed that most people left the account number section blank, while banks went by the section if it was filled. He stole $42,000, which reflected in his account the next day. With the fear of eventually getting caught, he went into hiding. Impersonating a pilot. Realizing he could cash more bad checks if he could project a shining personality with an air of authority, he impersonated himself as a pilot. He thought that air pilots were respected members of the community, and he schemed his way to stealing a uniform. He called PANAM Airways and told them that he was a pilot who was missing his uniform in a hotel room while traveling and was requesting a new one. With his forging skills, he used a fake employee ID, accompanied with a doctored Federal Aviation Administration's pilot license. Headquarters told him where to pick up his new uniform, and he was charged to the company. Abagnale claimed that it was not an easy feat, contrary to what was depicted in Steven Spielberg's Catch Me If You Can. as he was terrified collecting the uniform at the airport with the fear of being discovered by pilots and other airport personnel that he was merely a teenager. To get his security badge, he posed as a businessman, and he pretended to be a pilot by the name of Frank Williams to acquire his FAA license. Abagnale learned all he could about flying, posing as a high school student, doing a school article on PANAM. With the forged documents at his disposal, along with the newfound knowledge on flying, he hitched plane rides all over the world. According to PANAM, Abagnale flew over 250 flights, clocking over 1 million times and visiting over 26 countries. He used his forged company ID in order to fly for free, which was offered to employees by PANAM. This is called deadheading. While flying mostly as passengers, he was seldomly offered the controls of the flight as a courtesy. On one of these occasions, he accepted. He put the plane on autopilot. However, he claimed he couldn't fly a kite. PANAM started acting suspicious of Abagnale's activities. He evaded capture and switched identities again, this time opting to impersonate a doctor. Impersonating a doctor. He pretended to be a Harvard graduate and took the bar exam, and amazing enough, he passed. It took him 7 months of studying and 3 attempts to pass the exam. He then worked as a physician in Georgia for 11 months. He even practiced as a nighttime pediatrician, and fortunately enough, no emergencies occurred under his supervision. He soon found himself in an even slippery slope when a doctor who was an actual Harvard graduate came visiting and suspected Abagnale of his criminal activities. Fearing that he had blown his cover, he was relieved to have found out that he was instead invited to visit the local hospital, where he became a regular visitor and even landed a job. Abagnale, however, did not want to push it any further, and he decided to leave after discovering that a colleague was doing a background check on him. Going straight, getting captured, and escaping. After evading another potential discovery of his activities, Abagnale spent the next 2 years moving from job to job. He claimed he was tired of his criminal activities and decided to live a straight life from then on. He couldn't escape his past, as after settling in Montpellier, France, and after cashing in over $2.5 million in bad checks, a former stewardess and girlfriend recognized Abagnale from wanted posters and quickly alerted the authorities. He then served time in jail in France, Sweden, and United States. He also attempted to escape 2 times. The first was while he was being deported back to the US, but getting caught by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Constable. He claimed to have escaped via the bathroom as the plane landed. It was debunked, however, as employees claimed that the hatch was sealed shut, making it impossible for him to escape. Abagnale eventually posed as an undercover prison inspector in Georgia at a federal detention center. He did it to receive special treatment from guards, such as better food and treatment than everyone else. Posing with his new identity, he convinced the guards to allow him to call the FBI. In reality, he was calling his girlfriend, who herself was posing as an FBI agent, on the phone, and they arranged a meeting. He evaded capture one last time by posing as an FBI agent, but was eventually caught for the final time, helping the authorities and turning over a new leaf. Abagnale was granted parole after spending years in a prison in Petersburg, Virginia. The condition was for him to help the FBI in his ways to prevent any future success in crimes of con artists committing fraud. He found work lecturing about white-collar crime and shared his information and expertise to banks to avoid fraud and theft. He worked with the FBI for over 30 years as a world expert on document fraud, forgery, check swindling, and embezzlement. Failing to find stable work due to his criminal past, he put up Abagnale and Associates, an Oklahoma-based organization which advises companies in knowledge of fraud, and over 14,000 businesses have adopted to this anti-fraud measure. Abagnale still helps the FBI to this very day. Book and movie. In 1980, Abagnale wrote a book, Catch Me If You Can, detailing the events of his life starting from his childhood to his criminal career, and eventually helping the FBI and others. The book caught interest from the film industry. Several directors planned to take on the project, but never came into fruition. Eventually, DreamWorks bought the rights of the book and then produced a film version of Catch Me If You Can in 2002. Directed by the legendary Steven Spielberg, the film, however, was made to fit a more dramatic narrative, as several key points in Abagnale's life were exaggerated and dramatized. Abagnale is not a fan of the film and would rather have that part of his life stay and die in the past. Thank you guys so much for watching. And don't forget to hit the like button and leave the comment below talking about what you just watched and details you'd like to add. If you enjoyed what you just saw, please feel free to hit the subscribe button and notification button to get updated on our content here on Morrongo TV. Until next time, my dear YouTubers,